All right, welcome back to the second concurrent session of the day. Math courses require mastery-based learning. Our speaker today is Kate Sharp from Hawks Learning. As an educational courseware specialist at Hawks Learning, Kate has experience in implementing different course structures and redesigns across the country. Kate is passionate about providing students with adaptive resources that help them achieve their academic potential. She enjoys working directly with instructors in order to have a positive impact on students' academic success. If you have any questions during the session, please feel free to enter those into the chat session at the bottom of the Zoom room screen, and we will address them at the end of the talk. We're also going to be giving away a $75 Amazon gift card at the end of the session. To enter for a chance to win, click the link in the chat to enter your name onto the prize wheel. On that note, I'll go ahead and hand it over to Kate.
All right. Hi, everyone. Good morning, and thank you so much for joining. I'm going to share my screen quickly, and then we will jump in. Let's see. Does this look right to everyone? Or Catherine, can you confirm? Let's see. I've got a chat.
Yes, it looks good.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much. Like I said, my name is Kate Sharp. I'm an educational courseware rep with Hawks, and today I'm going to be discussing how math courses require mastery-based solutions. So, jumping in, first thing we need to do is discuss what is competency-based learning. So, what that means is that it is a personalized learning approach, which provides a flexible and engaging learning environment where student progression through the course is based on mastery of explicit learning objectives, or competencies as we'll be calling them, rather than through seat time or time spent on a topic in a course. So from there, let's see, this mastery framework is something that was defined by the Institute of Educational Sciences, also known as IES, and this is the mastery framework that they say is really important for a competency-based education course. So I'm just going to highlight, excuse me, a few of these things here. The first thing that's really important is to have an assessment system and an LMS that really fits your needs for the course. It's important to have this because that's what will accurately measure your students' progression through the course and allow them to keep up with their progress. It's also really important to have defined standards or defined competencies so that your students know how you're going to be measuring their success in the course and what they need to do in order to achieve that success. Moving on, the role for instructors in a competency-based course will look a little bit different from the traditional method. So in a mastery-based course, you're going to be able to give much more individualized support and feedback to your students, because this will allow you to use your expertise in instruction and curriculum development to really make this course your own and help each individual student as they move through it at their own pace. And then in the final column over here, it's also really important for your students to take ownership of their learning. Students really like this mastery-based approach because it's much more flexible than a traditional course structure. This allows them to move through the content at their own pace. And as we defined previously, it allows them to measure their success based on mastery of concepts rather than just spending X amount of time on a topic and moving on. So from there, these are a few of the benefits of using a competency-based education structure in a math course. We kind of touched on these before, so just briefly, I'll run through. The students get to advance when they master something rather than when they've spent a certain amount of time on it. The learning is more personalized because it allows them to go at their own pace and spend the time on what they specifically need to work on, because odds are that student A is going to struggle with something differently and need to spend more time on a topic than student B, who's going to struggle with something else. Emphasis on demonstrated learning over seat time. And then all of these things really empowers and motivates your learners to want to succeed and to know that they can succeed by moving at their own pace. This will help your students develop lifelong learning habits that ensure that they actually understand the content and can apply it. And these are things that they will take with them not only from your course to a subsequent math course, but study habits and skills that they'll take with them for the rest of their lives. So that being said, that is a great time to highlight how this can be used within the student experience with Hogs. So quickly, I'm going to switch my screen sharing and we'll jump into the Hogs software. Okay, can you confirm that you guys can see this?
We can see it.
Okay, perfect. So this is the Hawks learning approach. We have learn, practice, and certify. And this is what your students will see every time they go to complete an assignment within Hawks. So the first mode is learn, and this houses basically, well, exactly word for word what's in the textbook and the ebook, but with interactive components as well. So this, as you can see, will show your student all of the textbook content. We pull out anything that's really important. So major steps, instructions within these green engagement boxes. We do have example level videos throughout, so your students can see exactly how they should work out adding fractions with the same denominator within this video. They can also see it worked out step by step here below. If your student also clicks this watch button, that will bring up a lesson level video that gives them all the key takeaways from, in this case, lesson 2.6. These are short videos, usually 3 to 8 minutes long, so it is not meant to replace what you do as their instructor. But if you have any students who really are more visual learners, they like those videos, that's something that's always available to them. Coming through here, your students can continue to watch these videos, work through the examples, get comfortable with the content. But something I also want to mention is that all of our content is completely customizable. So what we've done here is added a learn screen note indicated by this break in the page. And when you do this, the top of the screen is the Hawks pre-created content. And the bottom of the screen is whatever you want it to be. So you can tweak our content, add to it. You can embed a video as we've done here. You can embed PowerPoint slides, or you could make a note as simple as, hey, students, know these 4 steps because that's going to be on your next test. Really anything you think would be beneficial for your students to know. You also have the ability to completely hide a Hawks screen. Let's see, I've got a, still on the Learn, Practice, Certify screen. Okay, sorry you guys, let me fix that. I'm so sorry. Let's see, did that fix things?
Yes, now we can see it.
Perfect, sorry about that. Thank you for letting me know. Okay, well, let me backtrack just a little bit to show you guys. Here's the lesson level videos, or excuse me, these are example level videos. Here's this watch button that your students can click to bring up the lesson level video. Going back, you can just see this is exactly what's in our textbook and ebook, but with these interactive components. So going back to this learn screen note, this is where you can tweak our content. The top of the screen is the Hawks pre-created content, and the bottom is whatever you want it to be. As I mentioned, you can embed a video like we've done here. You can embed PowerPoint slides, or even just make a simple note. But you also have the ability to completely hide all of the Hawks content and replace it with your own, or you could just, if there's something you don't want to cover, you can hide our screen and not show that at all. So after your student has worked through this learn mode, the next step is to move on to practice. And practice is basically exactly what it sounds like. Practice and learn are meant to prepare your student for step 3, which is certify. And so practice is not graded, but will have all the same problem types that your students are going to see and certify. So we really encourage them to work through that. And I'm sorry it's taking just a moment to load. Here we go. So there are several things I'd like to point out within the practice mode. First of all, we have a variety of learning aids here at the bottom of the screen. So we do have a skip button. If your student's comfortable with a certain problem type, they don't have to spend the time on it. We have try similar. So your student can click this to receive, the same type of question, but it'll test a different set of, it'll just provide them with different numbers. But if we were to actually work out a problem for fractions, you can either just use the division bar on your keyboard, or we also have this keypad that allows students to use all of these symbols that they may need in the course. So if we were to actually answer this one, let's say this over is, okay, let's click submit. And now obviously that was the wrong answer. Pretty much any online learning system is going to tell your students you got the problem right or you got it wrong. But where Hawks takes it a step further is with this explain error feedback. So that being said, your student usually gets this type of feedback. Here's what you were asked to do. Here's what you were asked to submit. And the answer is incorrect. But we go on to say, it looks like you found the sum of the two fractions before you found the LCD. Recall, here's what you need to do this correctly. So now your student knows exactly where they went wrong and what they need to do differently when they go to solve it again. At that point, they can go back to practice, try similar, and try again. Or if we continue to skip, maybe there's a certain problem type that your student doesn't even want to attempt because they don't know how to begin. That's okay. We also have this tutor button. And if your student clicks that, it will bring up step-by-step, learn, and solution. So step-by-step is also very literally what it sounds like. We'll walk your student through each step of solving that problem so that they know the steps they need to take when they go to complete it again on their own. So you can see the first thing they need to do is fill in these boxes. If they know the answers, that's great. They can input them. If not, they can display the step answers, move on to the next. Now they're on step 2 of 5, excuse me. So they can continue through that until they get to the solution and know exactly how they got there. The learn screens are also built back in here if your students would like a little review. And then solution, of course, they can always view the solution, but keeping with the Hawks mentality that, the solution, this is useless to your students without all of this, the explanation of how we got to it. We do provide that both in numbers and in words. At that point, your student can go back to practice, try similar, continue to skip, move through until they're comfortable. After they've been through all of the problem types within the practice mode and they're feeling good about the content, they can move on to certify, which is what they'll actually receive their homework grade for. There are 2 real things to note about certify. The first being that it looks and acts pretty much just like the practice mode. The main real difference being that we've removed those learning aids from the bottom of the screen. So that is absolutely for your students' benefit. That is not a punishment. Not sure, what the case is with all of you and your individual courses, but one of the main complaints we hear is that students might be acing their homework and then performing really poorly on quizzes and tests. Those grades aren't translating. And a lot of times that's because most online homework systems allow your students to use learning aids on graded assignments. Now, in and of themselves, learning aids are great things. You do want your students to use them. They do help your students learn, but they can also quickly become a crutch. So your student might not even realize how much they're relying on those learning aids until they're removed come test time and they realize, oh, whoops, I don't actually know how to solve this on my own. So that's why we remove them here within Certify. Our mentality is use them as much as you need to in the practice mode so that by the time you get to Certify, your students can prove to themselves and to you as their instructor that they can be successful and master this content without any outside help, because that help is not going to be there on their test. The second thing to note is that we make Certify mastery based. So what that means is that by default, we set what we call a mastery level at about 80%. Now that's customizable like everything else, but we find that if your students get 80% of the homework correct, that's a good indicator that they have mastered that content and they receive a 100 for having done so. So with this particular lesson, you can see there are 15 questions in the assignment with an 80% mastery level. They can look at the red heart, which is like the number of lives that they have left, and see that they can miss 3 questions and still certify and get a 100 for having mastered that content. Now, if your student misses a 4th question or they dip below the mastery level you set for them, they don't just get a bad grade. We bring in the adaptive component of Hawks. So when they miss that 4th question, The software will take them out of certify and put them back into practice mode, where there they'll get a custom set of questions based on what they missed in certify. So it is really tailored to the individual and what they specifically need to work on. Because remember, your student A is going to need to work through a certain problem type at a different pace than your student B. So we only think that that makes sense. And then that way, keep in mind, once they're back in the practice mode, they have the tutor feature, they'll receive explain error feedback, they can try similar until they're comfortable with what they missed, and then they can come back and try to certify again. So by default, we do give your students unlimited attempts to certify. Like everything else, you can customize that, but we find that that's a really motivational approach for your students, because a lot of students with math anxiety or students who don't think they're very good at math, it's really motivational for them to know, okay, if I miss this fourth question, it's not a bad grade, but it's an opportunity for me to learn from it, fix it, try again. So that is the mentality there. That is pretty much everything I wanted to walk through as far as the Hogs learning approach today, but I'm going to stop sharing and go back to the PowerPoint to tie that in a little bit with what we were discussing. So if we go back, we've walked through that student experience, and now let's tie it back in. So as you saw with Learn, Practice, and Certify, with Hogs, students advance when they master skills at a certain proficiency level. In this case, it's our default of 80% to master. Again, you can customize that for your course and what you see fit, but we do find that this is a much more personalized learning approach because it allows your students to spend the time they need to in the areas they struggle in and really approach that with a personalized touch and allow them to succeed at their own pace. Moving on, we also have emphasis on demonstrated learning over seat time or over time spent on a topic. As we touched on during that presentation, if your students do not certify, they aren't allowed to just accept, a mediocre grade and say, that's good enough for me and move on. We hold them accountable for going back to practice, remediating those mistakes, and then coming back to certify again. And we do hold them accountable for mastering that content and spending the time that they need on that topic. We also really try to put an emphasis on reporting and grades because transparency empowers and motivates learners. Your students need to know where they stand in the course and how they are doing in order to be successful and rise to that success. Assessment is a continual part of our learning cycle. Within our dashboard, your students can see their grades all the time. We do integrate with all major LMS systems, so those grades will sync over, and your students know as they are working through Certify how they're doing, because this meter will fill up towards this gold medal at the end until they know that they have certified. And then going back to how you as educators can help with this learning environment, you get to offer more timely support, and you get to intervene right when you see your students making a mistake. We offer a lot of reporting features within Hogs where you can see not only a by lesson and a overall performance breakdown and time spent, but you can see it on a per question basis. So you can see how much time your students spent on a particular question, how many times they attempted it, and you can get that really detailed reports so that you can identify, okay, these are the main areas my students are struggling in, and then address them either one-on-one in office hours or however you like to handle that, or as a class. You could pull up the most commonly missed homework question from a Hogs assignment and say, okay, class, this is what the majority of you missed. Let's walk through this. Let's figure out why. So you do have a plethora of those reporting features in order to hold your students accountable and intervene right when you see them making mistakes. And then lastly, students do develop lifelong learning habits. This is especially important in math courses because, as we all know, math builds on itself. Your students won't only take the study skills and things that they learn in your course to subsequent math courses, but they're going to be using that for the rest of their lives. And so if they can develop these good learning habits, they can really master these concepts as they're working on them in your course. It is going to make all the difference in the world in their future education, but also just for life, because we all have to use math daily. And with that being said, I would love to take any questions anyone has and save the last few minutes for that. Thank you so much for joining.